This is me 6 years ago in Vietnam. I was 27 years old, well, technically 26 plus 1 year in my mom's belly, a common way to count age in Vietnam. I was a young, happy woman, but I didn't have a boyfriend at the time. So in Vietnam, I was what people often call leftover. No matter how smart or successful I was, many people saw me as someone who had failed simply because I didn't have a husband and kids. This is me in Germany, 31 years old, still a young, happy woman. Here, youth isn't defined by physical age, but by mental age. And even physically, come on, 31 is still young. I still don't have a husband and kids, but no one calls me leftover. In fact, no one even cares if I'm married or not. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 5 drastic differences between being a woman in Vietnam and being a woman in Germany. Hi, I'm Tuyết, a Vietnamese living in Germany. On my channel, I share stories about my life here, how and why I came here, the exciting things I have experienced, and the challenges I have faced. If you're curious about living abroad or in a similar situation, I hope my stories inspire or help you in some way. I grew up in a small village in the middle of rural Vietnam. Think of buffalo sleeping on the street, ducks, dogs, and unsupervised children running around. A place where you at first glance might think that the world is still alright. But it is also a place where traditions and old beliefs are deeply rooted and upheld. So this is where I come from, this is my perspective. My stories might not apply to everyone, especially those from big cities in Vietnam. Similarly, my observations about Germany are based on my time here as an adult. So if you see things differently, feel free to share. I'm always open to learning. I'm the 4th child in my family. In Vietnam, whenever I introduce myself, people would ask if I had a younger brother, assuming my parents must have kept trying so hard for a son. When I said no, they would respond with confusion. Why did your parents have you then? They already had a son. This may sound harsh, but I heard it so often that I stopped reacting strongly. I would simply reply, yeah, they wish for another son, but instead they got a smart, pretty, lovely daughter. My parents' wish for another son wasn't entirely their fault. Vietnam's patrilineal culture places a higher value on sons. Sons carry on the family name, stay with the parents after marriage, and perform important rituals, a task women aren't allowed to do. In Germany, those cultural expectations don't exist. Parents may have a preference for a son or a daughter, but it's more about personal preference than societal pressure. Many Germans don't even want kids, so the whole having a son to continue the family line concept doesn't apply. Back to my story, despite societal norms, my parents love me deeply. My mom always told me how proudly my dad showed me to our neighbors when I was a baby girl and said, "Look how big, chubby, cute she is." Little did he know that big, chubby baby girl would grow up to be this small. In my family, 3 daughters graduated from university, while my brother dropped out of high school. My parents tried to convince him otherwise, but he wasn't interested in academics. Instead, he followed his own path and made it work. However, my parents faced criticism for letting their daughters pursue higher education, which is expensive in Vietnam. Many girls in my village stopped studying after high school, worked to support their families, and got married young. My parents stood firm, saying, "We were forced to stop studying due to poverty, even though we were good students. We wouldn't let that happen to our children. Education is the key to a better life regardless of gender." I'll never forget those words. The belief in education motivated me to excel. I attended the top business school in Vietnam, pursued my master's degree in Germany, and now work as a marketing manager here. In Germany, education is free and accessible to everyone. The system offers various pathways, ensuring that each person can find a suitable career based on their abilities. There's no debate about whether girls should pursue higher education. It's simply a given. In Vietnam, an ideal image of a pretty woman is quite specific. Pale skin, a height somewhere between 1m60 and 1m65, not too thin but definitely not too fat. And there is a strong emphasis on not being too fat. And countless other tiny details people seem to have an opinion on. Growing up, I never made the cut for this standard. I have a darker skin, which automatically excluded me from the pretty list. On top of that, people said I look older than my age, something I never saw in myself, but they kept pointing it out. At family gatherings surrounded by many unfamiliar faces, I was often greeted, "Oh, so you are the youngest one? I thought you were the oldest one. Why do you look so old?" Or, "Why are your siblings so pretty? And you?" As a child, I became deeply self-conscious about my appearance. On the other hand, I threw myself into studying. I worked hard to compensate for what I lacked in appearance, and I became the straight-A Asian kid stereotype. At the time, I think I used studying as a way to distract myself from the pain of not meeting beauty standards. But over the years, as I was exposed to more modern mindsets, I started to realize something important. Being pretty isn't about how you look. Beauty can be about intelligence, a great personality, or having good manners. Even so, my ideas about physical beauty stayed rooted in the Vietnam standards until I moved to Germany. It wasn't until I lived here, talked to people, and experienced the culture that I began to see things differently. I learned that there isn't one universal standard for beauty. There are different body types and each has its own charm. Looking back, I see now that the challenges I faced as a child shaped me in unexpected ways. They taught me to look beyond appearances and value the diversity of beauty in all its forms. Though those experiences weren't easy, they helped me to grow into the person I am today. Growing up as a woman in Vietnam, your life often comes with a pre-written script. Married by 25, a kid by 27, and ideally 2 kids, a boy and a girl by 30. I'm grateful my family didn't pressure me into this timeline. Being the youngest in a big family probably helped. I was never forced into anything I didn't want to do. But societal expectations were hard to ignore. I always found this life as a race concept hard to swallow. It just didn't sit right with me. I wasn't interested in rushing through life to meet deadlines someone else had set. At 25, I was single with no boyfriend. Now I have found a partner whom I deeply love, but even then, we don't feel the need to rush into marriage. My move to Germany wasn't about escaping this race. It was about exploring the world and life beyond Vietnam. But what I didn't expect was how freeing it could feel. Suddenly, the ticking clock stopped. No one asks me when I get married or have kids. No one expects me to hit specific milestones by certain age. Here I could just live at my own pace. And this is such a relief. I dream of a time when women in Vietnam can live as freely as people here in Germany. Free to choose their own path, free to define their success, and free to live life on their own terms. Looking back at Vietnam, I can see a shift starting to happen. Millennials are already questioning these rigid timelines. Some of my friends are still single and they are happy with that. Gen Z is even more relaxed, and I hope for Generation Alpha or Beta, these pre-scheduled milestones will feel like ancient history. Growing up in a village in Vietnam, I was surrounded by a deeply rooted idea of gender roles, driven by the concept of patrilineality. Men are seen as the pillars of the family, responsible for earning money and making major decisions. Women, on the other hand, are expected to be caregivers, but that doesn't mean that they are spared from financial responsibilities. Women are working full-time as men, but once they get home, the second shift begins, taking care of the children, the elderly, the husband, and the household. I saw this imbalance play out daily. After work, the men in my village would relax, watch TV, chat with neighbors, or unwind in some other way, while the women prepared dinner, showered the kids, and tackled the never-ending housework. My dad was more modern compared to other men in the village. He would clean or cook sometimes, but I rarely saw him washing dishes, since washing dishes was strictly considered women's work. My dad passed away years ago, so I can say whether his mindset would have shifted over time, but my brother, who grew up sharing similar beliefs, has started to change. He used to cook but refused to touch dirty dishes. However, as the internet and social media expose more people to new ways of thinking, even he has embraced more equality. Last time I called home, he was washing dishes and was so surprised, and my mom explained, well, if someone cooks, then someone else has to take care of the dishes. That moment stood out to me because she too had once believed that washing dishes was a woman's job. Here in Germany, things are much clearer. Dishwashers take care of that particular debate. But equality goes deeper than just sharing chores. Responsibilities are divided more fairly here. There is no assumption that housework is women's work. Instead, each partner contributes based on their strengths. My partner, for example, cooks more than I do because he enjoys finding new recipes. I like cleaning, he likes organizing things, so we just split tasks in a way that works for both of us. It's refreshing to live in a culture that contributions are seen as shared responsibilities rather than obligations tied to gender. While Vietnam still has a long way to go in achieving true equality at home, I see positive changes happening. Slowly but surely, traditional norms are being challenged, and I hope the next generation will grow up seeing balance as the norm, not the exception. There are still many other differences, but these are, to me, the most important ones. In the end, being a woman, no matter where you are, is about navigating unique challenges while finding joy in the little things. Looking back, whether it was 6 years ago in Vietnam or now in Germany, I have always found happiness in my own way. But if I had to compare, life as a woman in Germany offers more freedom and respect. I feel less pressured and have more time to focus on myself, whether it's developing more or simply relaxing and enjoying life. Though I have noticed positive changes in Vietnam, thanks to the internet and social media, younger generations are embracing modern values. I have seen more content in the Vietnamese community about women being independent, modern, and free to enjoy life, to make their own decisions, to raise voices when things are unfair, and to fight for themselves. Even modern men are joining the fight for women, which is so encouraging. Even in my village, everyone has a smartphone and a social media account. Despite living in a remote area, people still get a glimpse into modern life in other parts of the world. I'm sure my relatives and friends are watching this video right now, with subtitles of course. I truly hope this message will help shift how people in my circle view the role of women and how they can better support us in life. On a personal level, I try to inspire change within my family, especially with my mom. I share modern ideas and encourage her to think beyond traditional beliefs. One of the most impactful things I have done is travel with her, so she could see that life isn't about staying within the borders of our village. So, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching until the end. I would love to hear your experiences and your thoughts on the topic in the comments. And subscribe if you want to hear more exciting stories from me, a Vietnamese living in Germany. Have a nice weekend and see you in the next video.